In 1916, the Russian Empire inflicted a series of disastrous defeats on the Ottoman Empire, pushing them back and poisoning the Russians to strike deep into central Anatolia. However, the Ottoman Empire was saved by the February Revolution. The Russian government was overthrown, and all over Russia, the army mutinied. Pretty soon, the entire army was under the control of the soldiers, who began deserting in droves. The army was not an army anymore. It was a bunch of armed peasants who wanted to go home and murder their landlord. This allowed the Ottoman Empire to push the Russian army back to the border. Now, Russia was going to need somebody to defend its southern border, and the Russian army simply wasn't going to cut it. Luckily, the Armenians in Russia did not want a repeat of the Armenian genocide in Russia, so they signed up in droves. As the Russians fled the battlefield, the Armenians occupied the tanks and guns that had been occupied by their former owners. Better yet, the person they appointed to lead the Armenian army was an Armenian nationalist who had fought 2 wars of independence against the Ottoman Empire. He'd been surrounded with 30 men against 1,200 men. He'd held out for 3 weeks before evacuating his entire force in the middle of the night, only losing 3 men in the process. The one catch was, it's probably not a good idea to put a guy in charge of the Russian army who's spent his entire life trying to get Armenia independent, you know? Feels like he might take advantage of that opportunity, but whatever, he was really good at his job. He was appointed to lead the army in December 1917. He held out for 4 months, until finally, in March 1918, he ordered a retreat to eastern Armenia, evacuating with him thousands of civilians. However, once the Ottomans invaded eastern Armenia, he defeated them again in 3 great battles. Meanwhile, the Trans-Caucasian Confederation and the Republic of the North Caucasus had declared independence from Russia. A slight problem, the Trans-Caucasian Confederation was getting invaded by the Ottoman Empire, and they were going to have some peace negotiations. Peace negotiations which would restore the Ottoman border to exactly what it was in 1878 before Russia took some of its land. However, this peace settlement would leave the Trans-Caucasian Confederation virtually defenceless, and it would also mean that Georgia and Armenia would have to cede some historically Georgian and Armenian lands, and they didn't want that. And you know who else didn't want that? Germany. Because if the Ottoman Empire could gain influence and control over the Trans-Caucasian Confederation, then that means Germany's plans for expanding into the Middle East and getting some oil would be severely hindered by the Ottoman Empire, who was their rival in the region. So Germany had to find a way of preventing this, and do you know what their plan was? Georgia! Are you sad about the fact that you're going to lose so much land to the Ottoman Empire? Yes. Well, I have the perfect solution for you. All you have to do is step 1, leave the Trans-Caucasian Confederation, and step 2, allow my troops into your country to defend against the Ottoman Empire, and so I can retake back all your land. Okay, so with that, Georgia left the Trans-Caucasian Confederation. 2 days later, a war began between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Trans-Caucasian Confederation was at an end. The Caucasus had been balkanized. But remember Antranik? Well, now that Armenia had declared independence, you would think that Antranik would want to recognise the independence of Armenia. Incorrect. Antranik actually refused to recognise the Armenian independence because he believed that it should control all historically Armenian lands, and Armenia did not even claim all historically Armenian lands, so he refused to recognise this. Despite this, he still defended against foreign invaders. Using his troops, he held out against the Ottoman Empire and Azerbaijan. But then, slight problem. Oh no. There was a Bolshevik revolution in the city of Baku, and that means that all those lovely juicy oil was going to be wasted on the communists. And the Ottoman Empire wanted all that oil for itself. And similarly, Azerbaijan wanted Baku to be its capital city. So, they called in help from the Ottoman Empire to retake Baku. As Karabakh declared independence, Ottoman troops poured in before laying siege to the city. The offensive on the city began on the 30th of July, and on the 5th of August, they began their final attack to take the city. Hi, interjecting here, just like to make an apology. Animating Ben here. So, at this point, there was a country formed called the Provisional Dictatorship of Mughan, and it's about here. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of Azerbaijan. It's the grey bit. Anyway, I forgot to draw that country in. Just know that it is there. I forgot to draw it in, okay? It's completely insignificant. It does nothing. It's a British puppet state that was designed to fight communism, okay? That's it. It failed because the Bolshevik artillery kicked in at the last second. I'm not sure why the artillery wasn't already firing, but with the Ottoman attack repulsed, the Bolsheviks were overthrown by the Mensheviks and the socialist revolutionaries, who called in the British for help. However, many of the defenders of Baku were Armenians, and the British didn't send a lot of troops to defend the city. The Armenians thought that they should send more troops. In fact, to quote one of my sources, the Armenians were dissatisfied with the size of the unit. On the 14th of September, the second attack on the city began. The exact same day, the British realised they were going to lose and withdrew. A day later, on the 15th, the city fell. On the 20th of September, 5 days later, the invasion of Dagestan began. However, it wouldn't last long. On the 30th of August, an armistice was signed between the British and the Ottoman Empire, forcing the Ottoman Empire to withdraw to their pre-1914 borders. On the 5th of November, the Ottomans set up the Kars Islamic Council to hold order in the region while they were gone. On the 8th of November, they occupied the city of Petrovsk, but they couldn't hold off the evacuation any longer, and they withdrew. As a matter of fact, Georgia and Azerbaijan were part of a British occupation zone. So on the 17th, the British returned to Baku and occupied the two countries. So then the Aras Republic declared independence. Anyway, moving on to 1919 now, the Russian White Movement of the Civil War conquers the Republic of the North Caucasus, and the North Caucasian Emirate is declared as a replacement to said country and a rebellion against the White Movement. The Mughan Dictatorship is absorbed back into Azerbaijan. It was a British puppet state set up to fight against communism. The Karabakh Council was dissolved back into Azerbaijan. However, the Turkish War of Independence began, and the Bolsheviks wanted to help Turkey in their War of Independence. So, after defeating the White Movement, and after annexing the Emirate of the North Caucasus, they moved their troops through Azerbaijan to get to Turkey to help them get independence. And while their troops were in Azerbaijan, they decided they might as well annex the country anyway. Armenia would meet the same fate. Remember Antranik, who would refuse to recognise the independence of Armenia, but was still holding out against the Ottoman Empire and Azerbaijan? After both countries were occupied by the British, he decided that his work was done, and that Armenian independence had been secured. So he disbanded his unit. This was a bad idea, as in November 1919, a combined Turkish-Soviet force attacked from both sides and partitioned the country between them. And then over a year later, Georgia would meet the same fate as Armenia. Great news, this Saturday I am going to be doing a live-streamed Kahoot quiz. So the live stream's going to start with me reacting to my own video, this video, right? And then I'm going to do a Kahoot quiz live stream, okay, of all the information in this video. And so you just got to, remember the information in this video. We'll see who is paying attention to this video, This is all going to be on the test, okay? Remember this.